This week on Power and Politics, congestion pricing hits the 6-month mark. How is the controversial tolling program impacting your commute and your wallet? We'll break it down with a panel of experts. Plus,
the general election is in November, and I am in it to win it.
One-on-one with now independent New York City mayoral candidate Andrew Cuomo. Our Tara Rosenblum speaks with the former governor about his decision to stay in the race. And
stop the bleeding, Governor. Please veto this bill.
The continued push from Long Island lawmakers to stop a bill that could put the full cost of upgrading from home heating oil to natural gas on you. It's the latest in our Taxing Long Island series. Power and Politics begins right now. And welcome to this week's edition of Power and Politics. I'm Rich Barabi. It's officially been 6 months since congestion pricing began. The program faced lots of mixed reaction and even legal action from leaders at the local and federal level. But a new report is showing some promising results. Data from the governor's office shows that since those cameras turned on, traffic is down 22% on the last 3 miles of the LIE. It also shows LIRR ridership is up 6%. The program is on track to pull in $500 million this year, which the MTA says will be used to buy 44 new trains for the railroad. Congestion pricing imposed a $9 toll on drivers entering Manhattan south of 60th Street, as you probably know by now. Joining us now with more on this topic, MTA board member Sammy Chu and Republican State Assemblyman Michael Durso. Good to have you both here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rich, for having us.
Thanks.
Sammy, I'll start with you. You've been a vocal proponent of congestion pricing. You voted for it on the MTA board. What's your reaction to the data released by the governor's office?
The data is validating. We're getting positive outcomes that we had hoped for, and the debate that we saw, understandably leading up to the implementation of congestion pricing has now largely moved in favor by a big margin in a way you generally don't see with policy. It's effective. Traffic is down, travel times are reduced, pedestrian activity is up in the CBD. So I think it's positive, and it's really validating, and it's really happy about it.
Assemblyman, what's your take?
Well, again, Rich, I think the numbers are what the numbers are. But again, it goes back to the fact that it's another tax on working class individuals here on Long Island and throughout the state to go into Manhattan. It's just another thing that's taking money out of their pockets to go into Manhattan. We know about the numbers, as you said, but do we know the numbers on what it's doing to the local businesses in Manhattan? You said ridership is up, but then the problem is, where does the money stop? Again, there are proposals to raise 10% toll on the bridges and tunnels, maybe a 4% raise on fares for train riders. Where's all the money going? And that's the questions that people that I speak to have. Their concern is their wallets. I understand the governor's concern, the MTA's concern is their wallet. But the fact of the matter is the people that are taking the train and the hard, working class people of Long Island and New York State are concerned about the money coming out of their wallets.
Well, Sammy, you're on the MTA board. What about that, specifically making sure that this new infusion of cash from congestion pricing goes to the right places and isn't necessarily set aside for more toll increases, fare increases, which we know are coming?
Sure. First, I'll agree in sentiment with the Assemblyman. He's always demonstrated he's been a great steward for the people and looking out for them, and it's a very important consideration. I think something that is really important to remind people or edify them on is that all of the revenue from congestion pricing is going back into capital improvements, which is separate and apart from our operating budget. It's also worth mentioning that our operating budget is actually less than it was in 2019, and that is with a huge increase in service, most notably from the addition of Grand Central Madison. In terms of businesses and the impact on businesses, that data is also pretty clear. Broadway sales are up, the retail sales are up, and just anyone who spends any measurable amount of time in the central business district will just palpably realize that there's activity, there's a different feel, people are moving around better, there's less traffic. So I think the experience is there and the numbers back it up.
Assemblyman, what are you hearing from your constituents about this, whether they be folks who drive into the city, maybe they do business in the city and have to travel that way, or others who are taking the train each day.
Well, and it's like I said, it's their concern is the money, right? I mean, we could talk about the money. I know the governor is saying that they're projecting $500 million taken in for congestion pricing this year. And riders and constituents I have all question is, where's the money going? And then why is the train fare going to go up? Why is the fare on the bridges and tunnels going to go up? And I understand, as Sammy said, and he's got the numbers, and I understand it, that that's going into the capital improvements of it. But again, it's as much as they want to say it's going to capital improvements, the people are still paying for it. Whether it's through your taxes and the legislature giving the MTA billions of dollars each year to keep funding it, or now putting that tax on the people. Making them pay, whether it's congestion pricing, whether the fares go up. Again, where is the money constantly going?
Sammy, what do you think it does for the overall region if we continue to see a shift of people who are leaving the cars at home to switch to the railroad?
Well, we see ridership is up. There's, particularly, on express buses, we're seeing additional ridership on the subways. We're continuing to break post-COVID records on ridership on the Long Island Railroad, as well as satisfaction. Survey figures are up. So we're seeing people come. We're definitely seeing people migrate to transit and the railroad, and also showing that they're happy with that experience. And in terms of the money, where is the money going? This capital program, you have to give kudos to the governor, and the legislature for once again coming through for the MTA on our capital program. $6 billion of dollars of which is directly goes to the Long Island Railroad, and that's over the next 5-year capital program. And then there's another $800 million in funding for additional projects. Everyone is sensitive to the dollar, especially now. And I think the most important thing that we can do at the MTA is make sure that for every dollar we can come in, that there's the value is getting back to the riders.
Assemblyman, many of your constituents take the train every day on the Babylon line, and there are improvements to be made at some of those stations, no doubt about that. What about the idea that now there will be these dollars in place to address some of those capital issues?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, if the money's being spent, and again, and as Sammy said, the money that's coming in, if it's going to be spent on the Long Island Railroad, again, I'm obviously Long Island centric. I sit and represent districts across Long Island. We want to see those improvements go into the Long Island Railroad, and there are improvements being done. But all we ever hear about is the improvements to things that are going on in New York City. When it comes to, like you said, ridership and people's satisfaction, it's always about New York City, New York City, New York City, where there's obviously other parts of the state, and the people that live in those parts of the state are funding the MTA with their tax dollars, and now with congestion pricing and the bridges and tolls and the fares on the trains. They want to know and get what they're paying for. Right? Just like if you go to a restaurant, you don't mind paying a little bit more, but you want to get a good meal. So they want to get the things that they're paying for. And unfortunately, a lot of the MTA's money is going into the city for projects that are going on. We want to see it come out here to Long Island.
Sammy, how do you deal with that regional balance and making sure that there is balance for specifically Long Island, but also the other suburbs north of the city as well, and dealing with the city and the overall MTA financing?
Yeah, I think if you look at the overall numbers, it's very easy, especially if you look at this capital program. You look at, a vast majority of it will go to city-centric projects. I think it's worth understanding the revenue that, the New York City subway system is, the bulk of the revenue that does come into the MTA. But as I mentioned, there's $6 billion in this upcoming capital program that's committed just to the Long Island Railroad, and an additional $800. I think this is also a point to be made, and with your audience, because I think it's a conversation that they will understand if people actually take the time to have it with them. This capital program was emphasized and focuses on the things that are going to keep the trains running, state of good repair, that are not only going to make sure they may not be. People always say they're not the sexiest improvements. As someone who was an electrician in the field for 10 years, I actually think they're pretty sexy. Things like upgraded substations, things like making sure viaducts are in good shape, things are painted. Those are not only going to make sure that the system is more reliable, dependable, but it's also a good investment in making sure that we're not paying for what's called a decay curve with just kicking the can down the road on basic, maintenance measures and improvement measures. And this capital program is going to go a long way for us to recover from years of neglect in the favor of a lot of those glitzy projects that the Assemblyman has mentioned.
Assemblyman, we have about 30 seconds left. I'll give you the last word.
Sure. I mean, and I appreciate what Sammy said. And again, I think it's really what we're doing with, especially with the Long Island Railroad, is we're just catching up with projects that have been pushed off and pushed back because of New York City and the projects that they want to do in New York City. My concern with congestion pricing and the tolls going up and the fares going up is, again, the working class men and women of Long Island and New York State that need that extra couple of dollars to feed their families. And instead now they're paying it to get into Manhattan or they're paying it to get on the train. When are we going to work for them? In all honesty, when do we sit there and say, okay, the working men and women of Long Island and New York State can't afford the train anymore. They can't afford to drive in New York City just to do their job. And that's who I'm concerned about.
All right, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Appreciate you coming in. Good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you so much.
And still to come on Power and Politics, he lost the Democratic primary. Now he's running as an independent for mayor of New York City. One-on-one with Andrew Cuomo next. After a shocking primary night loss to Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo announced he's staying in the general election fight. News 12 senior political reporter Tara Rosenblum hit the campaign trail with the former governor.
Describe for me the emotions that you felt that night when you saw the numbers coming in, and of course the moment when you realized that primary night wasn't going to end the way you had hoped it would.
Yeah, Tara, frankly, I was shocked. All campaign long, we were way ahead in all the polls. And then on election night, it turns out that the people who actually came out to vote were much different than what they expected. Primary election tends to have a much smaller turnout, much more activists in the Democratic Party. General election, you have more Democrats, more moderate Democrats, you have independents, you have Republicans. And the general election is obviously what matters.
How did the polls get it so wrong? What have you come up with?
Yeah. The polls assume the people who come out to vote will be similar to the people who have come out to vote in the past. What happened here was you had an explosion of young people who were socialists who hadn't never voted before. And like 100,000 people came out to vote who they never expected. And they were overwhelmingly votes for the Assemblyman.
What was the single biggest strategic miscalculation you think the campaign made?
We had such a large lead that the campaign actually played it too safe. This city is at a tipping point. And the next mayor is going to make the determination if we go up or we go down. We're losing people, we're losing wealth. I was not aggressive enough in the campaign, not aggressive enough in making my case for my vision of what I believe needs to be done. Not enough of a discussion about how unrealistic my opponent's solutions were, in my opinion. What
was the moment or specific conversation that really convinced you to stay in and run as a third-party candidate?
Well, I had a lot of New Yorkers come up to me and say, you owe it to the city. We can't become a socialist city. If you say you're going to dismantle the police, public safety is a major issue. Crime is a major issue. So people are afraid of what my opponent is talking about. But we can turn this city around, and we can make this city the shining city it once was. I know that. I feel that in my heart, and I love this city too much not to try.
Now, you have also vowed, though, if you are not the leading candidate outside of Mamdani come September, that you'll bow out. So explain that to me practically how that would work, because didn't we just get the most powerful reminder of how off the polls can be at the end of the day?
It's very simple to determine who's the stronger candidate between myself and Mr. Adams. We're not talking about Mr. Sliwa. He's going to run as a Republican. Let him run as a Republican. It's really between myself and Mr. Adams, because we would split the vote that would make Mamdani the winner, and we can't let that happen.
You have called Mamdani's policies naive and worse, risky for New York. Which of his policies do you think would hurt the city the most if enacted?
The most dangerous is the basic socialist economic philosophy that is anti-business. A few years ago, I had Amazon coming to New York City. They were going to bring 25,000 new jobs, would have set up a national headquarters, and the socialists killed it and opposed it because they're anti-business. The other policy is he wants to dismantle the police. You dismantle the police. This is an extension of what they did when they defunded the police.
As you're well aware, there are still a large number of Jewish voters in this city who are concerned with his policies as it relates to Israel. His refusal to condemn certain language that is out there. Some of his critics have called him anti-Semitic. Do you believe that Zohran Mamdani is anti-Semitic?
You know, that calls to look into someone's heart and soul, and I'll leave that to a higher authority. I can tell you that statements that he will not disavow, like globalized intifada, which basically means kill Jewish people, that is highly disturbing. His praise of Hamas, who are terrorists, that is very disturbing. And not only is the Jewish community in New York the largest Jewish community anywhere outside of Israel, they're a vital part of New York City. And you can have your own global views, but you can't split the city. And you have the Jewish community that is very concerned about growing anti-Semitism, as they should be. And I want to be a healer, not a divider.
You, over the decades, you have had extreme and frankly extraordinary successes and of course also setbacks. When we're looking at the big picture, your decision to stay in this race, what do you hope it says about your legacy at the end of the day?
I believe in New York. I believe in public service. I know that I can make government work. We are at a critical moment, Tara. We have people leaving this city every day. That has to stop. We have to turn it around. And I know how to help do that. And I want to make sure I do everything I can. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
And still to come on Power and Politics, a call for the governor to block a recently passed bill in Albany, how it could end up costing some Long Island homeowners thousands of dollars. Welcome back to Power and Politics. This week, Long Island Congressman Nick LaLota backed a plea from GOP state senators calling on Governor Kathy Hochul to veto a controversial bill. If it becomes law, it would shift much of the cost of converting your home heating from oil to natural gas, all to you. Here's our Taxing Long Island report.
This is going to be another downward pressure on homeowners.
It's a common scenario on Long Island. A homeowner wants to convert from oil to natural gas and contacts National Grid to hopefully get the line extended from the main to their home, with the utility company paying the conversion costs. But a new bill just passed by the state legislature last month now puts the cost of that upgrade on you. Mike Florio is the CEO of the Long Island Builders Institute.
It's going to be about $10,000 more per household.
If the recently passed bill becomes law, it would nullify the so-called 100-foot rule and shift the financial burden for new gas hookups from utility companies to the homeowner requesting the change. All 8 Long Island state senators, 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats, voted against the measure. State Senate Republicans just sent this letter to Governor Kathy Hochul, urging her to kill it.
Stop the bleeding, Governor. Please veto this bill.
Union leaders say if the bill is passed, there will be multiple negative impacts.
It puts more of the homeowner, at burden, financially, and that bill will certainly, hurt union jobs.
But environmental groups are praising the legislation. The director of New York Government Affairs for the Natural Resources Defense Council says, quote, "This is a meaningful step toward fairness and affordability. ending the practice of forcing all ratepayers to subsidize fossil fuel infrastructure for new customers. The change will save gas customers across the state hundreds of millions of dollars annually and help level the playing field for clean heating options. Brooklyn lawmaker Joanne Simon was the lead sponsor of the bill in the state assembly.
The bill does not prevent new gas hookups. It simply means that everyone else won't be forced to pay $200 million a year to hook up new customers and line the pockets of utility shareholders.
But Senator Mario Matera of St. James disagrees.
All this is to do is to ban natural gas.
And Florio says the bottom line for builders and homeowners is
The costs just keep adding up.
Now, we reached out to Governor Hochul's office to see if she plans to sign the bill into law. A spokesperson said simply, quote, the governor will review this legislation. National Grid says it is, quote, committed to building a safe, reliable energy system that achieves the state's decarbonization goals while ensuring that we can continue to meet New York's growing demand for energy. Stay tuned. That's all the time we have this week. We'll see you again right here next week for another edition of News 12's Power and Politics. I'm Rich Barabi. Have a great rest of your day.